Did you arrive now?
Huh?
No light. Very good. Thank you very much.
You were in Japan
Yeah, I was in Japan
not
recently.
so long ago, 1 month or something.
Yeah, 2 months.
What did you do at sea there? Policing to be.
Well, I did some concerts. Met a lot of people. Nothing terribly remarkable. I mean, when you go to different countries, of course the countries are different. They have a different history and there's a different culture. But the people that come to the concerts that people like me do are people who like the kind of things that I like. So I'm always meeting people that I already have some kind of connection with. So it's very hard to say anything about, because they have more in common with each other than the differences in their cultures would lead you to expect. Because the universe, the virtual universe that is brought into being by recording, by gramophone records, by the circulation of music as an object, universally. That community is created the same everywhere. It's a community of taste. And it's quite an interesting phenomenon, and it's something which is in the world new since the last 100 years, probably, and certainly in music. Because before recorded music, you were either there, where it happened, or it didn't happen for you. There was no way that anybody could give you any impression of it afterwards. Music couldn't travel from one place to another unless musicians travelled from one place to another and performed. Unlike books and paintings, which could be sent around. And books, of course, which could be mass-produced. The minute music could be mass-produced like a book, this is a total revolution. Revolution in thinking, revolution in what music could possibly be, because music did not have to restrict itself to something which would be immediately forgotten. You know, the existence of music is forgetting. That's what music is about. And suddenly, 1887, that's crossed out. Suddenly, it's not about forgetting anymore. It's about not being able to forget now. Somebody makes a bloody record and it goes around and it goes around and you can't forget it. And even when you're dead, the thing is still people putting it on their record players and playing it, complaining that it's not like that anymore. There's too much memory now in music. It's a new problem that we didn't have. But because this music circulates through the postal service mostly, and finds sympathetic ears in all countries, when you finally go to those countries, the people that come to see you are the people that already listen to your records, who already belong, in a sense, to that virtual community.
Has this change influenced the music itself?
Yeah, absolutely, of course. I mean, it's made music less geographically centered. You know, of course there are still people who relate to their own folk traditions. But rock and roll is a non-local folk tradition, in a sense. But there are far more people whose musical community are not, you know, the 600 people that live in a circle around them, but it's the record shop and the radio. It's not a real community, it's a virtual community. A lot of people learn to play music by listening to gramophone records and copying them. They used to go and sit at the knee of the master, and the master would say, do this, or they would get in a band and learn to play with real human beings. Now they learn to play by listening to records and copying records. A bunch of people that are copying the same records get together and copy them all together. And this is a kind of virtual school. It's a virtual academy. It's a virtual community, and it doesn't matter where you are, because this flat, or now it's a little flat silver thing, it used to be a big flat black thing. It's the same. Whatever CD you play it on. It's the same. It's a very revolutionary thing, I think, and it does in fact create a supranational, extraterritorial community where people have more in common with other people that they've never met than they have with their next door neighbours.
Have your engagement in different projects changed, and in what sense during the last 10, 15, 20 years? I mean, you were engaged in projects like Peru and others. What are you interested in engaging at the moment, or for the last 1, 2, 3 years? Maybe change a bit your field of interest.
I think it changes all the time in a small way. I'm somebody who's interested in playing formal, organised, written music. And I'm also somebody that's interested in improvising with no rules at all, which are very opposite musical personalities. And I like to indulge both of them. I never wanted to make a decision between doing one thing or the other thing. I'm American and I'm English. I have 2 passports. I never wanted to make a decision to be one or the other, you know. I don't want to make a decision about music either. With this background that I was explaining about records, the thing about records is that if you want, before, if you wanted to listen to opera, you had to buy an expensive ticket and wear a suit. It cost a lot of money, and then you go to the opera. You go to a rock concert, you just go to some club somewhere. And then if you wanted to listen to the kind of music that they were making in the rainforests of the Amazon, you had to get on a boat and go to the Amazon. When I grew up, you could get all this stuff down in your local record shop. So it wasn't just a matter of learning to play like the Shadows or the Beatles or somebody. It was also a matter of being interested in Bartok and Aboriginal recordings and maybe electronic music and maybe something else and maybe something else. And all of this information came in and then got processed and then would come out again in some form. So that one didn't have to obey one set of rules, which is what you have to do if you learn locally with some master musician. You learn his way. That's the way of music. But when you learn from records, there's no master, there's no way of music. There are 100 million different ways of music, and you can pick and choose. This is the one problem about the virtual community, is that it doesn't really exist in a sense, because everybody's musical community is different, because their record collections are different. So they're not quite the same. And I've always tried to indulge, all my desires wherever I was able to, musically speaking. So I still play, basically, rock music with Peter Blake Band, for instance. I still work with David Thomas from Peru on projects of his. I've just finished a new song album, which is very much, completely through composed, actually by Stefan Kovac, who composed it. And that's really following a line which I've been following for a long time, in this attempt to bring together total through composition and this kind of rock song format. which I think are, so incompatible that you always get something interesting out of trying to force them together. On the other side, I continue to develop my instrument, the electrified drum instrument, and then apply it to various improvisational contexts. And every different improvisational context teaches you something new, puts you in a new situation. So that's what I do. I follow my different proclivities where I can. And in a strictly economic sense, I do more improvising work than big composed piece work or large ensemble work, simply because with 2 people you can do a concert and earn enough money to eat for the next 2 weeks. And if you take 6-piece band, this is a problem for anybody that's doing what Boris is doing. It's very hard to earn enough money to live on it. It's basic economics. If there were money around, we would be hearing a lot more interesting music than we are. Because half of the people that go around doing small projects do it for financial reasons, not because they haven't got big ideas. They have got big ideas, but nobody's going to pay them to do them.
Could you be more specific about your present engagements?
Oh, all right. Let me think. I'm going to the studio now to finish off some recordings with Peter Blegband. Then I'm going to Portugal to work with a group called Selectu, 2 Portuguese guys that I've worked with for a long time. Then I have a one-off concert in London with Peter Cusack and Alchemia, which is improvised. Then I'm doing a theatre music piece in Paris with Stefan Tickmeyer and various other people. And then I'm going back to America to do some things with Fred. That's my immediate itinerary.
How is your joint work with Fred developed through years? How do you find it now?
Well, Henry Cow was a big school, really. It was a big academy. We were all amateurs in the beginning, and we all learnt to play together. And over 10 years of, it was like a very extreme workshop that lasted for 10 years. Because the policy in Henry Cow was to write music that we couldn't play, and then we'd have to learn how to play it. So the frontier of the technique was always being pushed further than anybody at the time was able to take it. And with improvising, we tried to make it as rule-less as possible. So in both extents, fairly extreme. So all of the musicians that came out of that group can really sit down on a stage even now and communicate quite rapidly, because so much of our basic vocabulary came from those 10 years. And since that time, I've done a lot of different things with Fred. We did various song groups which were composed. We've done a lot of improvising as a duo. We've done improvising in larger contexts. I'm now playing in Tense Serenity, which is a new project of Fred, which is a serious attempt to put composition and improvisation together, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. This is the holy grail, actually, of music. It's so difficult to do, because if you're improvising and you have to start somewhere and you have to arrive somewhere else, you're very constrained, because you're limited by where you're going. There's a teleology that means that you can't be spontaneous. And if you're doing written music, you have to be prepared, ready to do it, and in focus. So you always have to be dealing with the problem of being ready to do the improvised piece, or not being able to improvise because you have to arrive somewhere. So Fred has a way of dealing with this, which I think is actually quite functional. So you don't know where you have to arrive, so you really can improvise. Fred will call something, and then you have to play it or not play. It's very complex. I won't explain it to you. It's an interesting group. And he played on this song record that I just made. We collaborate a lot, and we both collaborate on the written side and on the improvising side. And every time I meet Fred, he's got some new tricks that he's learned, some new vocabulary. And every time, and me too, because I've done things with other people in the meantime. So it's always stimulating. You know, we have a big, basic vocabulary, but there's always something new. And we don't do it too much. So we don't play 12, 15 times in a year maximum. It works well.
If you recorded the record like you did live in Prague and Washington in '76 or something, how do you think it would sound today? Or how would you experience it, or if it would change?
Well, I mean, we have released various other concerts from other times. In fact, I'm just about to release another one from Verona this year. And it changes a lot. Of course it changes. Otherwise we wouldn't put another record out. It would sound just like the one before. But anyway, it's embarrassing to repeat oneself too much.
Of course, I did not mean that. I was interested how you feel difference in the steps going ahead with
Steps.
how you change your time with this cooperation.
It's a very hard question to answer because when time passes and it's gone. It's very hard to compare time that's past with time that's current. And I never listen to anything that Fred does when I play with him, because that would be too distracting.
Could you play with Boris?
I could try.
Boris, how much improvisation was in your yesterday's concert?
The piece from yesterday has 5 parts. I mean, yes, 5 parts and 5 improvisation solos. I don't know the word for that in English.
Like a cadenza. It's probably
It's not. Confession, probably. Yeah. I put this name that we have 5 parts, which is this is in connection with my opinion about the arts creation in general, that it is content by formal aspects and the aspect of confession of something which is direct, which is without any which is, yes, it's a little bit, it's similar like this kind of position between improvisation and composition, because composition is something which is more formal, and improvisation is the best form, let's say, to express directly something from yourself. And so I wrote down these 5 parts of the composition, and with some speech also made a context and give to the musicians possibility to choose in which part before one part to make their own confession, their own solo in that context. So this was an idea of that composition from yesterday.
Because I saw you play, and your long solo on alto saxophone was very, very direct, interesting, spiritual, but you were watching the notes, it seemed to me.
No, I didn't watch anything.
It was improvised.
No, I didn't watch. My eyes was closed. I think I'm not sure, but I think.
Can you leave these improvised parts as parts of your compositions? Is it hard to keep? Does it come from your musical background that you improvise?
No. This is I didn't answer on your one of the previous questions that about my musical development. I mean about my musical language, which developed in that sense that there are many really big differences. So I don't have any. For me, like as I said, musical language is something which is important but of secondary importance. So I just use, I just choose, or I just build up this kind of musical language, which is for me at that moment the best one. I mean, to express what I want to express. The most adequate. I try to find this kind of musical language. So improvisation for me is something what I can't leave because the improvisation is start of every musical expression. I mean, also my compositions are written improvisation. I mean, I have maybe 3 phases in my work. In first phases, few months I just improvise on the piano, on the saxophone, something like that, and then I have some kind of elements to build up the composition, and then I try to write down some parts, and in third phase I turn on the computer, and then I start really to write down the lines. But in the result of my work, I keep improvisation just in that part where I need it, where this is the best way to express what I want in a dramaturgical total of the composition. So maybe in the future it will be more improvisation, I don't know. I don't have any plan about that, and I don't have really any prejudice about this. For me, improvisation is it's like 2 parts of the world. I mean, like plus and minus. Can't choose for one of that. You need both. So freedom and rules. You need both for a complete world.
think your main role is freedom?
Yeah, this is, but yeah, I think that is this kind of paradoxical situation is is a motor of his dynamic of development.
Just because I have to say that it's not the same mind to make improvisation and to make and produce and compose music. So it's the paradoxical situation as well.
I'd like to ask another question. I would like to bother you too long. Could you give any forecast for kind of East European music scene, or any opportunities or possible ways how it could survive any forms? If you have any idea of this black man.
Any music has to find a home, and it has to find what its home is. And either its home is where it is, or its home is somewhere else. So some Eastern European musicians are already at home somewhere else. People like Eva, Beethoven, Pavel, for instance. They travel around everywhere. They're really completely integrated into a community which accepts them, which is not their geographical community.
Is it only a matter of quality?
No. Well, you can be great. It doesn't make any difference. I don't know what it's a matter of. It's a matter of comprehensibility. It's a matter of being understood. A matter of speaking a language which is similar enough that you can communicate with people. I mean, in the end, all music is about communication of some sort. So you're either speaking a language which is comprehensible or which is incomprehensible to somebody. You just need to use what opportunities you have to find out who it's comprehensible to. I mean, it goes back to the question that you asked at the beginning that nobody answered, actually, this. You know, there are two reasons for making music. One is to make money, to find out what people want, try to give it to them. And the other is to do what it is that you feel driven to do, and hope that you can find the people that are interested as well in that thing. And the aesthetic way is the second way, and it's not an easy way. Actually, the first way isn't an easy way either, but the second way is really can be very hard. And you know, at a certain point, one wonders whether something continues to be English music or German music or Hungarian music.
Of course, I didn't mean the national side.
Yeah.
Just more kind of social contracts.
At the moment, it's the Czechs who have the strongest international connections, I would say.
They're geographically closest.
It may be a geographical thing, but I think it's also a cultural thing. You know, there was a lot of intense musical activity in Czechoslovakia in the 70s and 60s, late 60s and 70s. And this is something that they took, you know, this is one of the things they took very seriously. I mean, it may be, I put this forward only as a question. But in Poland, where you could do more or less anything, nothing much happened. But in Czechoslovakia, where certain things were not allowed, a lot of things happened. Maybe it's this question of resist me, make me strong. That the Czechs developed this so strongly because it was obviously so much hated by the regime. It meant something. People went to prison for it. It was very serious. And maybe that's why there was so much musical activity there, because they had to do it against really great pressure. And that pressure sorts people out. You have to be very, very serious to be ready to go to prison just to play some songs. So only the serious people survive in such a situation. But what they do has to be worth that price. Maybe it has something to do with that. And of course that's all gone now. That reason, that motivation, that pressure, that's all gone. Now you're just another commodity in the marketplace.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Phew, off the hook.